Hi, Rohan. Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
I just want to know whether I was audible.
Yes, sir, you are.
Okay. Hi, Harsh.
Okay.
I I can't hear whoever's talking. Can you hear me?
I can
Yeah,
hear
I can hear
you.
you.
Yes, you
Okay,
can.
okay.
Can you hear me?
Now I can.
Harsh, good to see you. Yeah,
Yes.
Sohani Pai Vaidya, doctor.
Hi,
Dr.
Harsh. Hi, Rohan.
Hi, hi. Deepak, how are you?
Others.
Good, good.
I can
You in
see
Goa or
Yogesh Kulkarni also.
in South?
Hi,
Deepak?
Gopal.
Hello,
Sorry.
Mr. Deepak. I'm Professor Sudarshan from Goa Business School. Nice meeting
Hello.
you.
Nice meeting you too.
Yeah.
Deepak is the vice chairman, and just on the center above is Mr. Rohan Bhandari. He is our very aspiring and dynamic young executive committee member.
Nice meeting you, Rohan.
Nice meeting you too.
Yeah.
Rohan is a chartered accountant by qualification. You must be knowing Mr. Harshvardhan Bhatkuli. He is the publisher of Business Goa magazine.
I
Plus,
see. Okay.
plus he
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
Hi, hi.
Hello, Mr. Kiran Thakkar, Brigadier Sahab. Good
Yeah,
evening.
nice. Good evening, sir. Good evening. Nice meeting you.
Brigadier is here in Goa. He settled down after his retirement from the armed forces. And a I would say he is just one person whom we should bring as early as possible on the GMA platform for
I see.
his
I see. Okay.
leadership talks.
Yeah, yeah.
So we are 37. How many students are there, Teja?
So we have around 60.
So all of them are joining here on this platform itself, or they are going on? They are going on the YouTube stream.
So we some may go there because here we can only host around 100 participants at a time.
Yeah. Has Mr. Maruf Raza joined? No, no. He has said 5 minutes to 6, and he is one of those military guys. So I expect that,
GMA, anyone else?
GMA, I'm expecting
Gopal is here. Gopal is here.
Gopal is there. Pradeep has not yet joined. Rusai, are you there?
Hi, Gopal.
Yes, sir. Very much.
Hi, Deepak.
Good.
So we have with us Professor Rahul Tripathi. He's from the Political Science Department and he'll be moderating the question answers at the end.
Okay.
Welcome, Professor Tripathi.
If I may submit to this August gathering, that Maharuf Raza,
Yes.
who was a major, he's from the same regiment as I am, Grenadiers.
Okay, great.
Yeah, Grenadiers. Oh, yeah.
Yes, and his father, late Brigadier Raza, was a very known figure in my regiment. He was also from Grenadiers, and he rose to the rank of Brigadier, and a very, very well respected officer of the Indian Army, and of course my regiment. So that's the affiliation with Maruf, though he may not recognize me because we are meeting after so many years. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Maruf is here. Good evening, sir.
Hello, good evening, Maruf.
Good evening, sir. Good evening. Good evening.
Hi. I was trying to join through another link, and therefore it was taking time. I was listening to all your introductions of chartered accountants, etc.
Okay.
Did you hear mine, Maruf?
I heard bit of it, regimental officer and all that.
Yeah, I'm Brigadier Thakkar. I commanded 17 the Grenadiers, and
Okay.
also commanded the center, which your dad commanded a couple of decades or few decades before me.
Yeah, I know. Yours is Brigadier. Yours is your which course?
I am 56 NDA, 66 regular.
Okay, so we are the same time. You have the same course as the chief.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because those from my school batch who went to NDA, they came through 56, 66.
All right. I'm aware of that.
And those who came direct came 67.
All right. All right. Good to see you after a long, long time, Maruf.
Yeah, we are the same age group, same batch.
Yes, sir.
Good.
Nice to know. Brigadiers are also settling down in Goa other than corporate.
With friends like new friends like Mr. Amin and a few others. I think it's a great motivation. In fact,
No, Amin is the man to know in Ladakh. In Ladakh, I'm saying in Goa. But in
yes,
Ladakh,
definitely. I second you.
Thank you.
Can we start, please? Because
Yes.
I feel we are
Yes.
now in a given time frame.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Sir,
Yes,
with your
please, sir.
permission, Mr. Amin Ladakh, may I start?
I think we should.
Yes.
Good evening.
So,
Please
good
go ahead.
evening, all the dignitaries and everyone present here today for the webinar. My name is Teja and I'm a management faculty at the Goa Business School. Goa Business School, as it is named now, it's a merger between 4 departments. And we at Goa Business School is associated with the Fomento resources, and we are organizing this Fomento lecture series since the year 2018. Initially, we had the series in a physical format, but now due to COVID restrictions, we have converted into a webinar format. And as a part of this, we have had the privilege in the past to hear some of the eminent speakers. To name a few is like, Mr. Hegde Desai as a program director at Google, or Mr. Sukhvinder Singh as a director of sports ventures, etc. I request our Vice Dean, Professor Sudarshan, to kindly welcome the gathering. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Teja. Good evening to you all. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to this Fomento lecture organized jointly by Goa Business School and Goa Management Association Goa. My special welcome to Major Maruf Raza, who is chief guest of today's function and also the guest speaker today. I also welcome the President of Goa Management Association, Vice President, other office bearers, and members. It's my pleasure to welcome my faculty colleagues and students to this webinar. Let me briefly introduce about Goa Business School. Goa Business School was established by amalgamating the departments of management, commerce, economics, and computer science. The amalgamation was done with certain specific objectives. The main objective was to reap the economies of scale in knowledge production and dissemination. GBS, that is popularly, Goa Business School is popularly known as GBS. GBS is the largest school in Goa University. It runs 7 programs and has around 45 full-time faculty members and a student strength of around 900 to 1,000. GBS aims to discover the synergies that exist in the related disciplines like economics, computer science, commerce, management, and showcase the strength in research and teaching as a business school. The number of publications and the PhDs produced have been shown a rapid increase in the last 2 years. That's since we have established the Goa Business School. The faculty members have undertaken various research projects, consultancy, etc., and have made a mark at the national and international levels. Our students are also doing well. They are employed by big multinational companies and they are doing well. They also have made a mark in their field. I welcome you all once again. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Thank you. I request Deepak Bandekar, Mr. Deepak Bandekar, Vice Chairman, Goa Management Association, to introduce the chief guest. Over to Mr. Deepak Bandekar.
Good evening, everyone. Can I be heard?
Yes.
It gives me immense pleasure and pride on behalf of Goa Management Association to introduce today's guest speaker, Major Maruf Raza. Major Raza was educated in India and the United Kingdom. In India at the Mayo College, Ajmer, and in St. Stephen's College, Delhi. Then in King's College, London, and at Cambridge University. He has served in the Indian Army since 1980, the Grenadiers and the Mechanized Infantry Regiments, and as an instructor at the Indian Military Academy. He is a well-known media commentator on global military and security issues. His talks range from threats of terrorism to India-Pakistan and the Kashmir issue, Sino-India relations, and what India should do to become a great power. He also lectures on leadership lessons from the armed forces. He is a media commentator on national security issues as a consulting editor, strategic affairs for the Times Television Network, Times Now, and Times Now World, ET Now, and Mirror Now, and has hosted the award-winning documentary show on India's armed forces, Line of Duty, that is still in India's Limca Book of Records. He hosts the weekend strategic affairs TV show Latitude and is also the publisher of the monthly magazine Salute to the Indian Soldier. He has authored several books and articles have been published in all of India's leading publications. He is also the author of the book Contested Lands, India, China, and the Boundary Dispute. Major Maruf Raza has spoken at institutions and corporates across India and the globe, which includes the United States, the United Kingdom, and the Gulf countries. And today, we have the honor and privilege to have him here at our event. So without taking any further time from him, I humbly invite him and request Major Maruf Raza to address today's audience. Over to you, sir.
Okay, good evening. Thank you, everybody. And in particular, to Mr. Amin Ladakh for having organized this at short notice. I know I'm speaking to very distinguished management experts and students. So thank you very much to the Goa Management Institute and all the other affiliates. If I get into introducing them, then again, we lose another 5 minutes. But the long and short of it is that thanks to everybody to find the time to be with us, and the Goa Management Association, of which I believe Mr. Ladakh is the chair. All in all, I'm going to look at something which I've been speaking about of late quite a bit, basically because my new book on China seems to be now catching everyone's imagination, Contested Lands, and it is a deep history of Sino-Indian issues. And why history? Particularly management experts will ask, why are you putting us through a boring round of history? Well, the bottom line is, as Brigadier Kulkarni will agree, if you want peace, then you have to understand the reasons of our last few wars or conflicts. Because with China, my view is that I don't think you are going to be allowed to live in peace anymore. And the reasons are that China was actually waiting for the right opportunity to kind of clip India's wings. And when the intrusions took place in Galwan in 2020 April, I wrote a piece in a newspaper to say, you know, it's a kind of 1962 deja vu. And the reason is that the reasons that led to China making intrusions in Galwan were very similar to what they did in the 1960s. And our circumstances and the circumstances we created that situation to bring upon, in a way, the Galwan intrusions by China on us. And let us not stand there as innocent nobodies, because you have to, as an objective assessment of any problem, as management experts will tell you, that you have to look at all sides of it. So, Samuel Huntington, who some of you might have heard about, and, the guru of so many issues related with geostrategic, geopolitical changes, his often quoted dictum is about the clash of civilization. And Huntington once called military men as the managers of conflict and managers of violence. So, therefore, military men have a managerial role to play other than the day-to-day management they carry out in their regiments and their units, which is pretty enormous. I mean, the sheer scale of the inventory and the sheer scale of the financial investment the government has made, and that's in their hands, would be mind-boggling to any management expert if you really get down to actually assessing what a commanding officer upwards is responsible for. But one of their responsibilities is also to read the signs of conflict. Unfortunately, in April 2020, we did not read the signs of conflict. And just like in 1962, I don't just hold Pandit Nehru, Krishna Menon, and their hangers-on as responsible for the conflict of 1962. I also hold many a general responsible for the conflict of 1962. So let me get to the point about what I'm trying to say. What I'm saying is that today, where we are at, in a more advanced modern way, we don't see a very different scenario today than what existed before the Chinese attacked us in 1962. And therefore, we need to understand why they are muscle flexing now, and we could not read their signs. One is, I believe that we were completely enamored by trying to win China over. Sometimes we see the political establishment trying to counter Nehru's legacy. But in a strange way, our foreign office exactly walks on the same footpath laid by Nehru and his followers. So Nehru's policy was, if you win China over, then you'll not have a conflict with China. And we seem to be winning China over in the last decade or so with massive trade with them. Many of you would know that our trade balance with China is enormous. In a sense, we are at a disadvantage. They have a 2/3, 1/3 advantage. And we've been still kind of kowtowing to them despite all the strong assertions that we will stop trading with them, etc., etc. Because quite frankly, Chinese work to a plan. We react to their plan. How do they work to a plan? They had decided that they will systematically, quietly project the image of the peaceful rise of China. And the peaceful rise of China would get everybody to open the doors to China, Chinese companies, Chinese investment, etc. And whether it was America in a decade ago and whether it is now, China has systematically entered every level of our society. Political establishment, NGOs, businesses, universities, colleges, researchers, think tanks, they've got advocates everywhere. And everyone tells you the best way to go forward is to kind of be in bed with China. But we have to understand that China has a concept of unrestricted warfare. Unrestricted warfare means systematically enter small and medium businesses and enterprises. It means enter the NGOs and political opposition and give them whatever support you can. And they did that in the 50s and 60s. Communist Party of India can deny as much as they want, but they were kind of happily kowtowing the Beijing or the Peking line. And then eventually, when all of you are compromised, then hit you from all sides. So let me tell you why China wants to do this to India. China wants to do this to India because one, China sees India as its only serious counter in Asia. Two, China sees India's engagement and increasingly close ties with the United States in the last 5, maybe 10 years as something which eats into China's hegemonic ambitions. India making assertive statements about China not following the laws of seas in South China Sea. So they know that India is no more on their side. And whatever other sort of visits our people have made, the special representative talks, which in any case has led us nowhere. From 1993 onwards, we've been having SR talks. We've had more than 22 of them at the NSA level. Ask them hand on chest to tell you have you made any gains. Zilch. So China was thinking that they will keep you engaged in this kind of nonsense so that they completely overtake the way of your society. They've already made people dependent on Chinese products, from air conditioners to cheap cell phones to even plastic gods and goddesses. Everything is made in China. So how do they take over the large landmass that is India, if not at least cripple? So they've gone into phase two. Phase two is to try and engage with big businesses, try and engage with politicians, try and even give you cyber shocks from time to time, like they did in Mumbai, and tell you, listen, you are vulnerable. And phase three would be to test the waters militarily. Now, militarily, you see, Xi Jinping cannot make an ambitious move into India and then seek to be backing out. Because nothing happens in China because some military commander became ambitious across the LAC in Ladakh. It happens because the highest establishment takes a well-modulated decision. Mr. Gokhale, former Foreign Secretary of India, has just written a book called The Long Game, How China Negotiates. And in that, he's talked about the head of China is like the head of an octopus. And there are 7, 8 arms that come out of China: the military, the foreign office, the finance ministry, the propaganda machinery, the intelligence agencies, and they all report to the top, which is Mr. Xi Jinping and the Communist Party of China, CPC. Now, when Xi Jinping came into power in 2012, he made a couple of assertions. His one assertion was that I will give to the people of China by 2020 a quality of life which will double their per capita income of 2012. So supposing somebody was earning the equivalent of $1,000 in 2012, he was expected to earn 2020 by about $2,000. But what happened in between? The global economy slowed down, and there was lesser dependence on China as the end of the supply chain or the beginning of the supply chain for the rest of the world. The second thing that happened is, I believe I've written a piece on 3rd of April 2020 in the Open magazine to say that the virus came from a Chinese lab. Now, many of those who were championing that, this is all bullshit, these were the same guys who now come around to admitting that they were so scared of losing their funding from China that they were not speaking against China. But why the virus? It didn't accidentally escape. That is the reason why China is not opening up the labs for global inspection. They had bought out the head of the WHO, who everyone knows was a fledgling foreign minister of Ethiopia till he suddenly got that job and China backed him. So he delayed investigations, then gave pro-China statements. The long and short of it is that China gave the world to believe that the virus has come from nature. Sorry, there is enough material in the open space to tell us it didn't jump straight from a treetop to pangolin and from pangolin into man. And where it was first discovered and where it eventually emerged, there was a distance as much as Delhi and Mumbai. Why didn't it infect anybody in between? So there are issues. Now, anyway, why the virus? The virus was to basically show that the global economy led by democracies has a leadership which can't handle a crisis. So the leadership in the global economy began looking inwards, and whether it was a bumbling President Trump or a bumbling Boris Johnson, but they showed to the world that, listen, your choices are either to follow those guys or to follow us who are in control even in a crisis. So they had a limited virus, and please understand that during the Cultural Revolution of China in the 50s, Mao Zedong was quite happy to lose 40 million upwards of people. I'm not saying it, researchers have said it. Please look at it on the net. And just to basically prove a point that his thesis was right. And when he reinstated himself in the communist hierarchy, he decided to teach India a lesson. Why? Now, there I come to the crux of my lecture. He decided to teach India a lesson because, firstly, Pandit Nehru had become larger than life in the international forum, chief champion on non-alignment. He was offered an alignment by the US, but he dismissed it because Nehru felt if Gandhi's calling card was non-cooperation, his calling card should have non-alignment. So he went with non-alignment. And at that time, China had aligned itself to Russia. Russia's Nikita Khrushchev initially made Mao crawl in front of him, but eventually gave him what Mao wanted. Mao wanted nuclear technology. He wanted nuclear technology to be able to ensure China's position in the world. So the nuclear technology that the Soviets helped Mao get came from much of the resources for it came from the region of Aksai Chin. Therefore, Aksai Chin is the region China will never give up. Never mind all the hogwash you hear from Delhi to say negotiations are on and China will finally buck in. They have actually gained out of these negotiations. We gave them the Kailash ranges, which had put their army completely on their back foot. And they got it out of us, and they have refused to give us everything else. This is a standard behavior pattern of China and Pakistan. They get what they want, and they refuse to live up to their promises. And it's a standard behavior pattern of India. If somebody was to write the story of India's fouled up negotiations, you will realize that, forget the past. Since the Modi government is only interested in looking at post-47 India, look at post-47 India, and you will see we fouled up on every negotiation. From why we went to the UN with the Kashmir issue and made a mess of it and had a bloody UN resolution hanging around our neck when we needn't have gone there. Then in 62, we lost the battle, but we didn't lose any negotiation because China didn't negotiate with us. In 65, we got some key points on what is now the line of control, Haji Pir, etc. We gave it back to the Chinese, Pakistan. In 71, we gave them 93,000 prisoners of war and got only false promises from Bhutto, right? And now, Chinese intrusions, we gave the Kailash ranges and we got nothing. And we said we are talking to them. China says, keep talking, boss. How long are you going to talk? For 3 generations, we'll talk for 3 generations. Hallmark of China is patience. Now, why is there tension between India and China? And this is what we need to understand. You see, if you look at the map of India and China, I'm sure all of us are familiar with that broad geography. There is this boundary line that runs from Kashmir via Nepal, Sikkim, Bhutan, Arunachal, goes to Myanmar. That's the India-China boundary line. Now, some military people say it is 3,488 kilometers. Some people say it is 4,200 kilometers. The reason is there are parts of that boundary line which is acknowledged as international border. But the real friction point, one is near Kashmir, right? When you look at the map of Kashmir, you see a big hook on its right side near Ladakh. That big hook is the area of Aksai Chin, which China occupies. And it comes to a slightly lower than Pangong Tso Lake, and that's the line of control or line of actual control, but it runs through that hook. It doesn't run around that hook. Now I'll explain to you why not around. And the other thing is there's the McMahon line, which runs from Sikkim right to Myanmar. And that is where Arunachal Pradesh lies. I'm sure all of us are familiar with Ladakh and Arunachal Pradesh. Now, these are the 2 friction points. What happened? This is both a legacy of the British Raj, because the British Empire in Ladakh was more obsessed, was keeping the Russian invaders away from Ladakh and parts of what was touching Tibet. And in Arunachal or that area, what was then Nifa, they were more obsessed in controlling the expansion of the Tibetans into our hill areas. One of the areas of dispute is Tawang. You hear the name Tawang again and again. and the debate still goes on, was Tawang Tibetan territory? Chinese says if it was Tibetan territory, it should have come to China. And other argument is it was never Tibetan territory because it was captured by a very enterprising Major Saab called Major Khating Military Cross, who was sent by the then governor of Assam. He went and planted the Indian flag there. It's another matter. Nehru got upset with him. Nehru got upset with anybody who upset the Chinese. So that was a very strange phenomenon. Now, next I'll come to, so there are the two boundary disputes. The other thing is, now I can go into details about the boundary, but it's going to take too much of time. The bottom line is that between Ladakh and Aksai Chin, which China holds on to for dear life because it is the source of uranium. And this was the uranium the Soviets were using in the 50s, which led the Soviets to explode their first nuclear bomb northwest of Aksai Chin, close to Xinjiang, Kazakhstan, in a place called Semipalatinsk. So when the Soviets gave the Chinese technology, they said, you set up a plant near Aksai Chin. And that is where it is in Lhasa, short of Lhasa, south of Lhasa, in a place called Loknor. And China was getting uranium from the same Aksai Chin area that the Russians were getting. So one is there, the other is mineral resource, and third is water. Why water? Because all the water systems coming into JNK in this water systems come from the Aksai Chin catchment area. That has so much of water that eventually when China can dam them, and China has already invested $26 billion in POK area to set up 5 dams. And those dams will allow China enough water to produce enough silicon wafer to make microchips. Now people ask how? Every 10,000 liters of static water mixed with the sands of a desert like Taklamakan Desert, north of Jammu and Kashmir, near Xinjiang. I mean, I wish I could show a map, but in these lectures you can't. But north of, if you look at JNK, north of India, there's a place called Xinjiang. And north of that, part of that is a place called Taklamakan Desert. Now, from there, you mix the sand and the water and put some other electric concoctions into it. And you can create, for every 10,000 liters of water, a 30 centimeter square silicon wafer, which allows you to keep microchips. So the one big microchip maker in the world is in Taiwan, a company called TSMC, Taiwan State Manufacturing Corporation. And China desperately wants that. In fact, some people say China doesn't want Taiwan, it wants TSMC. So give them TSMC and they let Taiwan be. But there were 2-3 ambitions of China that Mao Zedong had set out when he set up Communist China. One was to get Taiwan because it felt it was a breakaway province and it must be absorbed into China like Hong Kong has been. 2, he said Tibet is the palm of my right hand and the 5 fingers with the palm must be taken up by China. That is Ladakh, Nepal, Sikkim, Bhutan, Arunachal. So China is not going to settle, and whatever anybody tells you, China is not going to settle till it gets its palm and its 5 fingers. So don't think just by trading with them, you can rule out the possibility of conflict. Japan and Taiwan have more trade with China than India has, but the possibility of conflict with China remains high on their agenda. The other issue to understand is that the Chinese see Tibet as a very big source of water. It is the mother of a lot of rivers in Asia and perhaps the mother of most rivers anywhere in the world as a plateau. So therefore, they're not going to let go of Tibet. And when the Chinese walked into Tibet in 50-52, Nehru happily ignored it because he felt it didn't require his intervention to upset things. Had we recognized Tibet then, Tibet would have been occupied by China and there'd be a legally binding resolution against China to someday do something. But there was no resolution against China, so China took over Tibet, and Tibet then provides them a plateau from where they get resources, mineral resources, water, and dominate all lower riparian states, whether it's India from Ladakh side or India through the Brahmaputra or the Mekong Valley or other Southeast Asian countries. So we signed a Panchsheel agreement with China in 1954. And what is the title of the Panchsheel agreement says? You know, peace, cordiality, la la la, and recognition of Tibet as a region of China. So you recognize Tibet by a treaty that it's a region of China. China sends you, does a deal with you, recognizes Jammu and Kashmir as a region of India. Then the debate finishes as far as China is concerned. We did that, but we couldn't get back anything in return. The other point is that China had resorted to what is today referred to as salami slicing, what was yesterday referred to as incursions. And these incursions led to China occupying Aksai Chin. There is a highway that connects Aksai Chin on the north to a place called Kashgar. Kashgar is the capital of a place called Xinjiang, which is north of Jammu Kashmir. From there comes the China-Pakistan economic corridor that goes through Pakistan and is given money to Pakistan as a bailout. And another highway goes from Kashgar, runs via Aksai Chin and goes to Tibet. So there is no way China is going to give away Aksai Chin. In fact, their intrusions in 2020 was to take more land so that they could give more depth to the highway. In the event of a conflict, Indian artillery shelling would not be able to disrupt traffic on the highway. Take your mind to the India-Pakistan conflict over Kargil. The reason why Musharraf and his gang wanted to occupy those heights around Kargil so that they could bring from observation and heights artillery fire directly onto the highway that connects Ladakh, Leh to Srinagar and disrupt the traffic, because that was the major lifeline for supporting troops and the local population there. So China fears we would do the same. In fact, China wants to connect Aksai Chin to the area called POK, which is north of India. They signed a deal with Pakistan in 1963. They were thinking of it so far ahead, 1963, imagine, 60 years ago, that they wanted to have that region because Shakscam Valley, for which they signed a treaty with Pakistan, is a treaty now our right-wing nationalists say कि वो जमीन हमको लेके रखना है, और मैं उनको कहता हूं कि जो आपके पास है वो तो नहीं संभल रहा, आप वो क्या लेंगे? You can't seem to manage what you have. I don't know what you're going to go and get from there. But the fact of the matter is that Shakscam Valley has 242 glaciers, the highest number of glaciers in the world, which China intends to reap the waters of and produce more lakes and more water for not just generating electricity, but for silicon wafers and what have you. We are holding on to a wedge in between. The wedge in between is the Siachen Glacier. If we let go of that, then that whole region from Aksai Chin to POK and going up to Muzaffarabad comes under China-Pakistan control. China has built up Pakistan from the late 70s after the 71 war, really, or earlier, before the 71 war, because that's how Kissinger's visit was facilitated by Pakistan into China in 71. They have engaged effectively with the US after the 71 war, thanks to Kissinger, but they built up Pakistan as their proxy against India to keep India distracted. Now, where do we see ourselves? One, in the 60s, Mao Zedong decided to teach India a lesson. Why? Because there were reconnaissance flights that were taken on by a person who still lives in Mumbai. His name is Wing Commander Jagginath. He's 90-something, 2 Mahavir Chakras, MBC and VAR. And he photographed the entire region from Aksai Chin right up to Lasha. It's a pity when he went to show the report to Krishna Menon, Krishna Menon just asked him one question. Did you see the Chinese? He says, yes, sir. He said, okay, go away. And he was shocked that he had brought path-making information about the Chinese and their game plan. But the fact is that India was collecting that information, passing it on. There was an MI, British MI representative who used to be in the IB office till 1956 or even later. That information was going from India to United States because we were reasonably close to the US before the 60 war. And that is why one of the reasons Chinese attacked us, because they thought the US was using India as a launchpad to interfere in Tibet. Eventually, when the Dalai Lama escaped from Lhasa in 1959 March, India got Dalai Lama on its lap, thanks to the CIA, not the efforts of our intelligence agencies. They manipulated his whole departure. And when he came to Kalimpong, he was received by Mr. M.P. Menon, who was the father of Shiv Shankar Menon, who also later became Foreign Secretary and National Security Advisor. And therefore, Nehru claimed he didn't know of the US role in all this. Well, we have to accept Panditji's words for what it is. But others in his office were very closely involved with the CIA. I have brought out details in my book how information from Pandit Nehru's office was being passed on to CIA on a regular basis from 1949 to 1962. There are footnotes in my book that gives that information. The other aspect is that the US now is seeing India as the one country that can counter China's ambition and plans in Asia. So whether it is us joining the Quad or whether making the US our largest modern day defense supplier, though in all Russia still is number one, but all the recent major deals, barring aside the S-400 deal, have been done with the US, about $19 billion upwards. And China sees India as an emergent face of democracy in Asia, which obviously counters China's thesis and counters China's shadow in Southeast Asia. The 62 conflict, I must bring out one or two points because I owe it to every fallen soldier of 62 conflict. It wasn't that he did not fight. He fought with sticks and stones when his ammunition ran out. But the army lost because it was not allowed to fight. And let's not blame Pandit Nehru itself. Let's not blame only Krishna Menon. Let us blame all those bloody spineless generals who did not stand up to our politicians. Whether it was Karan Thapar's father, General Thapar, whether it was B.G. Kaul, who was the biggest buffoon in uniform, who was given the command of a corps in Tezpur, or whether it was Monty Palit, who was then a brigadier DMO and later became a major general and has written his kind of story, War in the High Himalayas. But the bottom line is they succumbed to the stare of Krishna Menon. They shut up. They did not speak. They did not have the moral courage. And for their weakness, our men on the front died. But do you know that lesser men were involved in the 62 conflict than they were involved in the Kargil conflict? So how is it that we lost? 80% of the Indian army was not used. The Air Force was not used. Because when the HC went to give advice to Krishna Menon, his name was APSI engineer, he was asked to shut up. He says, if you use the Air Force, the war will escalate. China had second-hand aircrafts that the Russians had given them, like cardboard dummies standing in Tibet. Those photographs proved that. They had aircrafts that could not fly in high altitude. We had aircrafts that were far superior to China. We did not use them. Instead, Krishna Menon was told by Bholanath Malik, who was Nehru's security advisor all through Nehru's tenure, and which I have reason to believe was on the American handouts. And he told the Indian establishment that Chinese aircraft will come and bomb Chennai. They couldn't have reached Calcutta, yeah. And we're talking about Chennai. These are the disloyal men of India whose names should be pulled off from all the masks. I have argued all along that Krishna Menon's statue in front of the building of Sena Bhavan in Delhi is a disgrace to our military men, and every damn chief of army staff hasn't had the guts to get that damn statue removed. So let's not blame the politicians. Let's blame our entire lot. We gave in to the Chinese pressures. We are giving into Chinese pressures now. And we are not finding suitable responses to take on the China. And remember that the 62 conflict took place in the window of 1 month, exactly 1 month, 19th October to 19th November 1962. Why? Because that was the 1 month that Khrushchev had told Mao that you do what you want with India, nobody will bother, because I'm going to needle America with the Cuban Missile Crisis. So the world's attention was a nuclear conflict. They saw India-China conflict as a sideshow. Today, the world's attention was on the pandemic. And if there is an India-China conflict, it will be seen as a sideshow. So please understand, the circumstances seem to be, there's a deja vu that seems to be 2022, could be a repeat of 1962, only difference being this time the Indian army will fight and it will fight like hell. My book has a full chapter on how a conflict can unfold. And the conflict will unfold Ladakh may not be the spot of the conflict. Arunachal may be the spot of the conflict. Military men call it a feint. They will hit you somewhere, get you distracted. They'll hit you in another place where you're not prepared. Sadly for China, we are fully prepared to hold every inch of territory. Our guys will not give ground. Last time they were not allowed to fight. This time, even if they're not allowed to fight, they fight. Because that's what they've heard for the last several months and years. Their commanding officers tell them, "Ki beta, chhodna nahi hai morcha. Hold on." And they will hold on. They did that under General Sagar in 1967 when the Nathula incident happened. China tried to do muscle flexing. We handed back to them 340 dead bodies. China was quiet for 20 years after that. They tried again in 1986 under General Sundarji in a place called Sundaramchu, where the 62 conflict had also started. It's near Siliguri, if you know the map of India, north of West Bengal. And Sundarji surrounded them from all sides. And Rajiv Gandhi was forced. Sundarji himself told me that Rajiv asked him, "What have you done?" He says, "Sir, I have done what is my job mandated by the cabinet resolution." He said, "What am I to do?" He says, "You have to do your job now, sir. You have to decide where do we go from here." He looked around the cabinet and he says, "What's our policy on China?" And a long familiar face in cabinets who rose to even higher positions than cabinet said, "Our policy in China is don't upset the Chinese." He says, "Where did we get that policy from?" He says, "From Madame." And he says, "Where did Madame get the policy from?" "From Pataji." So Rajiv said, "Well, let that be a policy." It's another matter that we are lucky the Chinese withdrew a day later. And Rajiv was invited with great respect and red carpet by China for talks. So you want to be respected by the Chinese, stand up to them and stare back at them. Otherwise, if you feel you're just going to do another big business deal with them, like many of these companies are doing, getting Chinese investments and going to their bosses with profit margins and saying, "See, we've got another big investor." They're buying you out, my friends. Be prepared. I am not suggesting we go to war. I'm just suggesting that guard your backyard. They're getting in from all sides. Go into the internet and type out unrestricted warfare. There is a manual written by 2 Chinese colonels, which has not been denied by Beijing. There is a book I'm reading by Brigadier Spalding of the US Army. He's been a China expert for better part of his life, has served in White House, has served in National Security Council, has lectured in all top universities, has an American PhD, and he has been doing exactly he has been doing exactly and saying exactly the same things that the Chinese manual says about taking over societies. He's even brought out instances in his book when Joe Biden's son went with Biden when he was vice president of America and Air Force 2 to Beijing for talks. And while father was doing some diplomatic work with Beijing, son was doing a deal with a Chinese company, but he comes back a week later, a Chinese company puts $1 billion investment in his company. You're going to have instances like that. So if you ask me, are we going to go to war with China? We are already at war. And war is not only about fighting at each other. Modern warfare would involve space, satellite, cyber attacks, and biochemical attacks of the type which keep coming on your society. You think this is the last of the pandemics? Forget it. They'll keep coming with repeated alarming speed. There's a book I've written a blurb for. It's called Mission Shenzhen. It's written by Tuhin Sinha, who's one of the BJP spokesperson and another colleague of his. And I read the book, and believe me, it's as close to real life as it can be. They've got viruses for every day, for every weather pattern, for every society. And they'll hit you every time you become too big for your boots. What is your counter? Do you have a strategy? I don't think we have. We are half the time when you go for talks with the Chinese, we are either doing sightseeing or eating chow. We are not even bothered to try and find out that every man, every woman who negotiates for China is a member of the party. The party lays the line out that this is what you will speak. Distract the Indians, confuse the Indians, but don't give away an inch from your agenda. In the end, I would just like to make a couple of short points. One is there is a lot of controversy about the Henderson Brooks report of 1962. Well, every successive government, including the BJP government, had said we will declassify it, but Arun Jaitley on Parliament said we will not declassify it, though he was a champion of declassifying it earlier. Why? Because the intelligence and the Babus and all others say, oh, we should not give away the position of our trenches and our morchas, because that's all mentioned in it. You can easily publish it by blacking it out. But never mind. Our generals, most of them have read it. They have learned lessons from it. They have plans in place to counter any kind of a situation that came out in 62. The second thing is, we need to build alliances. We should not make the mistake of putting all our eggs in the same basket, that is America's basket. Because America, I am sorry to say, most of you might be speaking with an American twang, because management people love to follow the American model. But America has a poor reputation for standing up for friends and allies. Japan has been their long-standing military ally, but they told Japan also that in the event of your conflict with China over Senkaku Diaoyu Islands, we will only support you if China attacks you first. When China attacks you first, they're not going to come with an invitation card. They'll blow you to bits. By then, it's gone. So unless you make a clear assertion, like nuclear weapons, they're not to be used. They're to deter conflict. They're to tell your adversary that you try once, we will hit you with everything we have, that you will cease to exist as a viable civilization. Pakistan may be trying to acquire more weapons than India, but it knows that under mutually assured destruction, it will cease to exist. And if China was to attack us, Pakistan will also attack us. If Pakistan attacks us, China may not attack us. If Xi Jinping fails to get mileage out of his threats on Taiwan, air armada notwithstanding, he will then be pushed by his party leadership that you're next on the line unless you get us some territory in India. So either way, a territorial conflict looms large. But you can deter it by signaling to China that the loss to China would be so severe that it's not worth it. How do you do it? Go back and build a stronger alliance with even Russia. Russia is the country today that has leverage both with China, Pakistan, and India. America doesn't. But our bureaucrats and diplomats love to engage with America because their children are all getting scholarship to American universities. So you fall into America's trap because America gives you the deal of your lifetime. Nobody wants to go and study in Moscow or Patrice Lumumba University in Russia. So therefore, we have to segregate our personal interests from our national interests. I say all this because fortunately I'm not compromised. I'll end here. I've spoken for about 40 minutes and that's what I told Amin I will do. Happy to answer questions.
Lovely. Yes, go ahead, Mr. Tripathi.
So, Teja, you want me to come in at this stage?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, Major Maruf Raza. It's always been a pleasure hearing you. I personally have been a keen follower of you right from our student days. And we can very clearly see that the fire and the punch remains as it was several decades back. So it's been a fascinating, I think, survey of what China is and how India should look at China. You touched upon history, you touched upon politics, geopolitics and geoeconomics. So there was hardly any dimension which was left off. And more than anything else, I think the way you have been pretty vocal about the role of the so-called tall leaders and the generals. I think your views have been pretty clear in terms of their articulation. I'm sure the audience has a number of interesting questions and comments.
May
Yes.
I just submit? I can answer maybe 3 to 5 questions. You can sift it out because I mentioned to Amin that I have to rush off by 10 past 7.
Okay. Okay. So fair enough. So maybe we could take one or two questions directly from people? You could raise your hands.
I'm happy to answer directly because by the time, but I'll request anybody makes a question. I know some of you will be more knowledgeable than me. Please don't make a statement, just ask a question.
Yes. So the floor is now open. You could just raise your hands, introduce yourself, and be pointed in your question.
So there's one question in the chat box.
So we'll start with Harsh.
True.
So let Harsh start with his question.
Hello, sir. Good evening. Sir, is COVID the start for the new age of biological warfare?
It's a good question. You see, COVID is biological warfare, and it's not the start. In fact, as I was talking about the Manual of Unrestricted Warfare of 2015, it says that China will use any means possible to dominate the world, and biological warfare is one of the means. And COVID, as you know, are made in biolabs. Now, those who are apologists for China argue that these were experiments being carried out and some germs slipped out. I believe otherwise. They were sent out by design. You know, there were 3 flights a day from Milan to Wuhan, and there was no reason why vials could not have gone with the flights before it became public knowledge. There were many Chinese who were coming for the Chinese New Year to China in 2019 and 2020 early from Europe, etc., because they're all over the place. And many of them would have carried it. And there is now new research indicating that China was working with some US-based lab and some think tanks that they had set up in the US, which they were funding indirectly to 2-3 resources, like the Hawala passing of money. And this was coming to the heads of the think tanks, who were then projecting to the world that COVID had nothing to do with China, but they're now all being exposed. It was just a matter of time. So clearly, these kind of things would happen. Sadly, we in a democracy are law-abiding, and democracies will find it very difficult on the face of it to do what a totalitarian system does. But I do not rule out the possibility that pushed to the wall, intelligence agencies in the West cannot do the same. Please remember, in the earlier world wars, the British were known to wrap up prisoners with blankets that had smallpox on them. And this in turn killed a lot of prisoners. So moral high grounding is something you do when you're sitting in a plush office wearing a nice tailored suit and then you speak all that. In reality, intelligence agencies in the West can be equally lethal. A decision has to be taken, and the decision, if it is taken, I'm sure China will feel the ripple. The only difference is China doesn't really worry about loss of life. For the rest of the world, loss of life matters.
Okay, thank you. We have a question in the chat box from Mr. Deepak Bandekar.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you want to ask? Yeah, go ahead. Okay, Mr. Bandekar's question. According to you, why is the center in Delhi not as stern with safeguarding our Chinese borders as much as they are in safeguarding our borders on the Pakistani side? And do you think our present Modi government will hold forth and fight in the event of war with China or Pakistan?
Let me put it slightly differently. If losing a war would mean to losing elections, they will fight. Okay, so the bottom line is, obviously they will fight. Why? Because a loss to China, and that's what they said about Pandit Nehru, that though he died in 64 May, he died in October 62 after the rout against the Chinese. So the point is, will we lose against China? Or will China not gain against us, which is seen as loss enough by the Chinese leadership? That is the question that Xi Jinping is pondering. We do not have territorial ambitions. So we are not going to go out and try and capture Tibet and liberate Tibet. I think it's foolish to even talk of it. And those right-wing chest-thumping nationalists who say that 1,87,000 square kilometers of Indian territory are not with India, we'll go and liberate it. I'll take you out for a holiday anywhere in the world if you can go and liberate it. But everything that is not under your control is very tightly held. You cannot liberate it. And at what cost and what for? You know, Pandit Nehru once said about Aksai Chin that it's a patch of land where not even a blade of grass grows. And somebody jokingly said to him, Panditji, your head also doesn't have a blade of hair. So would you also give that away? But my view is slightly different. My view is if you want to avoid a conflict, you have to move towards a settlement. And moving towards a settlement, you have to be willing to give and take. You cannot have everything which you claim. Because I did not go into details, but all that we claim in Aksai Chin was never ratified by your adversary as your territory. The Johnson line made in 1865, the McCartney line that came in 1908, or in between the McCartney-McCarthy line that came in 1897, were all lines that from time to time one party claimed and the other party didn't claim, or what the other party claimed, this party did not accept. So there was no fixed agreement. It is the McMahon line that there was some kind of an agreement, at least in Arunachal Pradesh. So we thought that we had reached a stage from 1993 where we could keep talking to the Chinese and avert bullets firing on the border. There's a friend of mine who's written a book now, and I've written the afterword of the book, and it's called Bulletless Border Management, which how we managed to manage the border for whatever 30 odd years without firing bullets at each other. But the bottom line is that we were obsessed with the Pakistani threat. One reason is armies like to prepare for a war they can win. They don't like to prepare for a war they would have to fight and fight hard. So China was left to the Ministry of External Affairs, and the Ministry of External Affairs monitored everything from what kind of buildup you'll have on China to your patrolling patterns on the Sino-Indian boundary. The China Study Group works under the MEA, and the MEA defines that this patrol will go touching village A, B, C, D, E. Patrol is a foot patrol. And on Pakistan's front, they left it all to the armed forces. And they say, look at you guys, you're firing at each other all the time on the LOC. Whereas you see the LAC, there was no firing happened. But the MEA looked blank and lost when the fighting took place at Galwan. So now it has become an accepted thing that leaving to the MEA is asking for a repeat of 62. So the army is going to get more involved in it. The army has done repositioning of troops. Earlier, we had about 60-70% of our troops focused on the Pakistani threat. But now it has shifted up and we have enough troops in place to deal with the Chinese incursion, whether in Ladakh or in Arunachal. China has more troops, but in mountainous terrain, when you want to attack and capture territory as China wants to do, you have to have 7 to 10 times more troops than your adversary, who can hold a mountain with 1/6, 1/7, 1/10 of strength, because the mountains give you defensive potential. You have to attack upwards. And so you have to be prepared to lose a lot of men. They would have had lots of losses in 62 also, but we were not allowed to fire at them. We were not given enough ammunition. And when they came, the orders came from Delhi to all the generals, abandon your posts and fall back into Assam. We will fight them in Assam. And the rest is history. That's all in my book, Contested Lands. Next question, please.
Rohan Joshi. Sorry. Rohan Joshi, go ahead with the question.
We also have a question by Dr. Vidyadhar.
Yes, can I? Yes, Major Maruf, I am very much, of your fan. Hear your discussion. Yeah, I have one question for you. That is, we were for last so many years friends of Russia. Russia helped us every time, whether it's the liberation of Goa or whether it's a liberation or I would say independence of Bangladesh. Every time the Russians in United Nations or United Security, that's Security Council, or in actual war like Bangladesh, they send what you say the nuclear submarines and all. Then what is the reason the present government changed its policy towards the US from the Russia, which made Russia even for the first time to have a military exercise with Pakistan?
Let's get one thing straight. The present government didn't change the policy to lean towards Russia, lean towards America. The leaning towards America actually was in the offing for some time. America reached out to India and started aggressively engaging with India after the Kargil conflict. And we saw that at that point of time, America was the only country that had the clout to kind of put a hold on Pakistan's ambitions. So Clinton said to Pakistan when Nawaz Sharif went there on 4th of July 1999 that as far as we are concerned, Kashmir belongs to India. The line of control is the border, and you guys attacked, so you withdraw, and I will not give a joint statement. This is in the book Clinton Chronicles. Now, that gave New Delhi a signal that America is the country that would be your partner to engage with in 2000 onwards. So Kargil happened in 1999. So from 2000 onwards, for the last 20 years, India was engaging with the Americans effectively. Americans will think with their wallets in their hand. So if you gave them defense deals, they were happy to do this with you. In turn, Russia had become relatively insignificant in global geopolitics. And therefore, India needed another partner also, and America supported India's entering into the nuclear suppliers group. You needed the nuclear supply technologies to use your nuclear reactors capabilities effectively. So America got you that membership, and therefore the NSG countries could supply you technologies which was banned to India before that because of the NPT and everything. And America was therefore giving India support. And even you had visits by American presidents to India for Republic Day. You had America kind of announcing to the world that India is the country that would be America's partner for the 21st century. All that sounded very good. But at the same time, it is not that engagement with Russia did not happen. Every year, the head of the Indian government and the head of the Russian government meet. That kind of meeting we don't have at the head of government level year on year with anybody else. Putin recently came here, even it is for 6 hours, but he came. And he brought with him the message, I'm told, that I could mediate with China because I have power, clout with China. And I will maybe have an arrangement with India, China, and Russia, which could become the arrangement of the next century if you wean away a little from America. Let's see whether we do that or not. And at the end of the day, India, I believe, can do well as a swing state, which means it goes with America when the need arises, it goes with Russia when the need arises, and it stands alone when the need arises. Then you can be truly as a country that the world will respect. Because we basically punch well below our weight. Look at Israel. It was founded at the same time as us. And it has a population of 8 to 10 million. And we are 125, 130 billion, 130 million, 1.3 billion, this 1,300 million. And where are we? We're still looking for somebody who hang on to their coattails to move forward in life. Why? You have to ask yourself that question. For too long, we have been dependent on buying things from outside. This is what happened with Pakistan. Pakistan, the economy never found its feet because they kept boasting, we have the best cars, we have better cars than India, we have this. But they were getting from everything from outside. China got things from outside, but look where China has gone. Why is it gone there? You have to ask yourself questions. Is your democracy working the way your founding fathers had wanted it to work? Is it giving you the kind of growth, the benefit, or is it India's economy growing despite our democracy? And if not democracy, then what is the model for Southeast? Is a totalitarian state the answer? A theocratic state the answer? There is a lot of debate on, but the problem with India is, Amartya Sen said, we are the argumentative Indians. We'll argue all our lives and still not come to a solution. China doesn't waste time with all that.
One last question, perhaps.
Yeah.
Rohan Joshi has asked a question. How much territory have we actually lost in Galwan area? And till when our troops are going to fight Chinese with sticks and batons rather than rifles?
Nothing. And nothing really. We've not lost. We had gained actually in the Kailash ranges, gave it back to them. But we haven't lost any. So much of the media that goes into a tizzy about, oh, the Chinese have moved 1 kilometer here and there. The buggers haven't even bloody well gone there. Go there and see the terrain. And you'll realize nobody knows where the map lines are. It is all snowy, cold, rocky, rainy. You are lucky to be hanging on to what you have. It is the most forbidding territory in the world. So it's not that we've lost anything, and it's not that we have to worry about any losses there. Losses that happened until the 1962 conflict. And we have been sitting quiet about it from 62 to 2022. Suddenly we've woken up that we want to go and get that land. That's one of the reasons that China got upset with us. Because when we did the application of Article 370 and then we published fresh maps of India, like we had published in 1954-55, which upset Mao. This time we again published fresh maps, which you now see Ladakh looking like, a large European country, right? Which has Aksai Chin, which has POK, everything in it. Just by you publishing maps, you are not going to be able to claim that area. And that in fact works at upsetting them even further, that you have actual designs for claiming the territory through military aggression. How else will you claim it? You think China is going to do it? No. So we haven't lost anything. We haven't gained anything. We should now, and one of the other reasons that China was upset with us in 2022, because after a lot of delay and deliberation, we decided in the decade before 2020 to upgrade our infrastructure. That was actually after Sundarji, when Sundarji encouraged Ministry of Defense to start upgrading infrastructure. So from around 1990 to 2010, in 20 years, we slowly started building more roads there. Earlier, our thinking was that if we build roads up to the front line, then Chinese, if they attack us, they'll roll down very easily to the plains of Assam and Ladakh. So let's not build roads. The most stupid thinking, and I don't know how all our intelligent bureaucrats subscribe to that. They seem to be the wisest men on earth because they passed the civil service exam. But they didn't seem to see the logic of this, that how not building roads is going to prevent the enemy not to come down. They'll come by helicopters and they'll come by aircraft. Why do they need to come down the road with Colonel Bogey's March playing behind them? So now we're building roads. They found that upsetting. We're building bunkers. And one of the areas near the LAC where the confrontation took place was the highway, which was built from Tobruk to DBO along the Shiok River. So this thing is upsetting the Chinese, that these guys are now preparing to hold on to this territory. And they want more territory than they have. And we say we want more also, but I think we'll do well to hold on to what we
have. Thank you very much, Maruf. I think we will need to now put all the questions on hold. Over to you, Dr. Sudarshan.
I think over to Ms. Teja.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Professor Rahul Tripathi, for moderating the session. I now request Mr. Rohan Bhandari, ex-member of GMA, to kindly give a vote of thanks.
Yeah, I would like to request the chairman of Goa Management Association, Mr. Amin Ladakh, to virtually present to our guest speaker with a small token of our appreciation.
Mr. Marufraza, thank you very much for the insightful talk on China. You covered the whole of 60 years in about 60 minutes. Of course, it will be interesting to always interact with you and a little more about in details about the frontier line of our country and how our armed forces or the captain of the armed forces have reacted to the military or to the ministry. With a small token of appreciation, I have these small twin Mario Miranda plates. I will show to you, and this will be sent to Mr. Amaru as a token of our love and appreciation. So,
Thank you.
This is from Goa Management Association. Thank you, Mr. Maru, for that. Just 1 minute that I'll take is that, the latest book that Mr. Maruf has authored, Contesting Lands, which was published in October 2021, is available in all the stores of Goa. And it will be interesting to read as a comprehensive book on India-China relations and what exactly is happening to that whole state of Tibet and Sikkim and Nepal and Arunachal, etc. So I strongly recommend. I have gone through a few chapters of that book, and it is very, very engrossing and very addictive. But I recommend to everybody to perhaps take a dig at that. This book is available in Goa, and those who want, you can register your request with the GMA office. We'll arrange for it. And I'm pleased to inform you that Mr. Major Raza will be here in Goa a little later in January or early February, first week. And he will be happy to sign the book himself when somebody who has bought it would like to have a signed copy. So please register your request. It will be our pleasure. Mr. Maruf will also visit Broadway stores in Panjim in one of the appointed days. And those who would like to meet him in person, we will be able to do that over there. So this is my message. Thank you very much once again, and over to you, Rohan.
Yes, it's my pleasure to propose the vote of thanks today. Thank you so much, Maruf Raza sir, for such a fantastic session. It has been a really no holds bar, very, very candid, a typical Maruf Raza session today, and the passion with which you speak is really, really fantastic. Really, hats off for for the knowledge that you're having, and you've taken a time from your busy schedule to give us this lecture. We've been listening to you we have been listening to your commentary on various global and military matters, and we've been seeing you on television, we've been seeing you on the newspaper clippings, and it's fantastic for us to have you on this exclusive platform for us here. Thank you so much, Maruf Raza ji, for a fantastic session once again.
Pleasure. Thank you. We need to go. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
would like to thank the Goa University and the Goa Business School for introducing such a fantastic lecture series, and having such eminent personalities help us to disseminate the knowledge. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. P.K. Sudarshan ji. Thank you so much, Teja Dicholkar madam. Thank you so much, Rusai. And again, thank you to all our participants, to the faculties, to the students, and to our GMA members for attending this session. To the Goa University and the Goa Business School, thank you so much for associating with the Goa Management Association. We are looking forward to explore so many more synergies with you. Thank you so much. Over to you, Amin ji.
Thank you, Mr. Rahul Tripathi, also, who moderated the session.
Yes,
and
thank you so much. Thank you so much.
All students of Goa University who have attended this program, and I'm sure this will be not the first of the series. There will be many more opportunities to interact and partner with the Goa Business School, GBS, as it is said. Thank you, all the staffers at Goa University.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.
Dr.
Amin. Thank you, Mr. Deepak, and thank you, Mr. Rohan. We look forward to have similar programs in future. Thank you very much.
Oh, it was our pleasure. It was one of those very successful interactions and successful partnerships that we have had. So we are quite excited about this. Thank you, all of you all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Teja, Ms.
Good
Teja,
night.
anything more?
Thank you, sir.
Sorry?
Thank you, sir.
No, sir. No, sir.
It's over, no? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Bye, Chairman. Bye, Ron.
I will ask you not to worry. I'll be last to leave. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody.
Bye to our members. Anyone is around still
Thank you, Deepak.
gaming.
Thank you, Rohan. Yes, yes.